Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader and tonight we're going to focus on the foreign policy of Egypt under the development and under the leadership of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi over the past decade. But we will be, of course, starting with the main headlines and the main top stories after saying hello to our dear guest for tonight, Dr. Milad Mumtaz, the international relations expert. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you.
At a time. We will be starting straight away with the top stories that took place for today as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received a phone call from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Thursday, which tackled the latest developments in the Gaza Strip, including the Egyptian intensified efforts to reach a ceasefire. President al-Sisi and Guterres probed the collaboration between the international efforts to succeed in mediating efforts amid ongoing dangerous circumstances which necessitate a settlement for the Gaza crisis and an evasion of expanding the circle of the conflict. They stressed the significance of guaranteeing the flow and the sufficient humanitarian aid to all parts of the besieged Strip without any obstacles, especially with the collapse of the humanitarian system and the exposure of Gaza citizens to the dangers of famine and epidemics. The two sides warned of negative humanitarian repercussions of the ongoing Israeli military operations in Palestinian Rafah, which hindered the transfer of the injured Palestinians outside the enclave, as well as the flow in the humanitarian aid into Gaza. Also on Thursday, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received the Jordanian Prime Minister Bishr al-Khawasna in the attendance of Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said that the Jordanian Prime Minister delivered the greetings of the Jordanian monarch to President al-Sisi and praised the distinguished historical ties binding the two countries. He expressed keenness on boosting joint cooperation at the aim of achieving the ambitions of peoples of the two countries within the framework of the 32nd round of the Higher Egyptian-Jordanian Joint Committee. The spokesman added that the meeting tackled the situation in the Gaza Strip in light of the sincere efforts to reach a ceasefire, exchange the hostages, as well as facilitating the humanitarian aid to the besieged Strip. Both sides expressed concern on the catastrophic repercussions of the Israeli military operations in the Palestinian city of Rafah. Meanwhile, the 32nd round of the Higher Egyptian-Jordanian Joint Committee concluded in the new administrative capital, chaired by Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and his Jordanian counterpart Bishr al-Khawasna. The committee was followed up by signing of new bilateral cooperation protocols in the media field. At a joint press conference with Jordan's Prime Minister al-Khawasna, Madbouli said that Egypt and Jordan confirmed the support of the Palestinian people to establish an independent state on the borders of 1967. The Prime Minister noted that Egypt affirms opening the Rafah border crossing 24 hours a day, contributing by 80% of the humanitarian aid to the Strip. He reiterated that Egypt exerts the utmost efforts to reach a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. For his part, Jordan's Prime Minister said that the talks affirm the two-state solution for the Palestinian cause. He stressed that Egypt and Jordan reject any forced displacement for the Palestinians as it liquidates the Palestinian cause. And finally, on the economic front, on the sidelines of the ministerial meetings of the 32nd round of the Higher Egyptian-Jordanian Joint Committee, Minister of Trade and Industry Ahmed Samir met with the Jordanian counterpart Yusuf al-Shemali to discuss the means of fostering ties on both the bilateral and the regional levels. Samir praised the bilateral historical strategic ties and stressed the significance of the pillars of partnership between Egypt, Jordan and Iraq in the field of industry, in addition to an integrated cooperation that bind Egypt, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Morocco to expand the volume of trade. The meeting also witnessed an exchange of views on several files of common concern and discussed the activation of a number of agreements signed between the two countries in different domains. We will be getting a comment on those pieces of news for today by Dr. Milad Mumtaz after this break, when we'll be starting with the main headline and the main top story for the report, for the upcoming report for the daily debate, which will be focusing on the development and the leadership of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi of the foreign policy over the past decade. We'll be having more details in the upcoming report. Stay tuned.
Since President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi assumed office on June 8, 2014, the Egyptian foreign policy succeeded in achieving a new start on various pivots, topped by the following: obtaining a non-permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, assuming chairmanship of the United Nations Security Council Counter-Terrorism Committee, assuming chairmanship of the Arab Summit, combining membership of the African Peace and Security Council and chairmanship of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, assuming chairmanship of the African Union. Under President al-Sisi leadership, Egypt showed keenness to establish balanced relations with all countries of the world, East and West, North and South. Egypt strengthened deep ties with many countries, whether with the sisterly Arab and African countries or with the major powers led by the United States, Europe and Japan, in addition to openness to other powers such as Russia and China. Accordingly, President al-Sisi paid foreign visits and participated in the regional and international summits and forums, other than his bilateral visits to various world countries, which come for the interest of Egypt politically and economically. In this context, Egypt adopted firm stances, especially towards the regional issues in the Middle East, topped by the crisis in Syria, Libya, Yemen and Iraq. However, the Palestinian issue remains on top of the Egyptian priorities, where Egypt, in cooperation, organized Cairo Conference on Palestine, Reconstruction of Gaza on October 12, 2014, to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people and remove effects of the aggression. The conference, however, succeeded to secure nearly $5.4 billion in international aid for Palestine. The challenges imposed by the developments of the Syrian crisis and their close relation to the Egyptian and Arab national security pushed the Syrian issue up to the top of priorities of the Egyptian foreign policy. Egypt also participated in the meetings of the Mini International Committee on Syria at the levels of ministers and senior officials, where it continued its efforts to urge the international powers and Syrian parties to push forward the political track. Egypt continues its efforts to host the Syrian refugees, whose numbers are estimated at nearly 500,000 people, where it provides them with all support and privileges to obtain basic services in various fields, especially education and health, like all Egyptian citizens. The Libyan crisis comes at the forefront of the Egyptian foreign policy priorities, where Egypt affirmed this fact through its initiatives, in which it stressed its firm stance towards the developments in Libya. The Egyptian initiatives are based on three principles, namely, respecting unity and sovereignty of Libya and integrity of its territories, non-interference in Libya's internal affairs, and maintaining its political independence, as well as commitment to the comprehensive dialogue and non-violence. As for the situation in Yemen, Egypt has always affirmed its support to the Yemeni legitimacy, where the Egyptian policy has always been based on supporting unity of Yemen territories, welcoming all resolutions issued by the United Nations and Security Council on the situation in Yemen, as well as supporting the peaceful settlement and national dialogue in order to reach a compromise solution. On the level of Egypt's relations with the Arab and neighboring countries, The year 2019 witnessed the launching of the trilateral cooperation mechanism among Egypt, Iraq and Jordan by holding the first summit of leaders of the three countries with the participation of President el-Sisi in Cairo on March 24, 2019, during which it was agreed to enhance cooperation, coordination and integration among the three countries in various fields. The second tripartite summit was held with the participation of President el-Sisi on the sidelines of the opening of the United Nations General Assembly in New York on September 22, 2019.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I am honored, as I said in the beginning, I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Dr. Milad Mumtaz, the international relations expert. Thank you very much for being with us again. I would like to ask first about what happened today. We have seen a lot of action, a lot of goings between the visit of the Prime Minister of Jordan, between the meeting of the Prime Minister of Jordan with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and maybe an hour ago or so the phone call that was conducted between the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Those were the top stories for today. I would like to ask more about what happened for today. How did you see the phone call that was conducted between His Excellency President al-Sisi and the UN Secretary General for today, discussing the latest developments in the Gaza Strip?
Actually, you know, what happened today is a continuation of what's been going on since October 7th.
Yes.
Because Egypt has been very clear, I would say that crystal clear, that the role of Egypt has not changed since October 7th.
Yes.
Egypt has been trying really efficiently to find a solution to the atrocities that's been inflicted upon the Palestinians in Gaza. Okay, for example, you know, the phone call today between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Secretary General of the United Nations,
yes,
Mr. Guterres, I believe, I would say, I strongly believe that that's been going on for a long time. You know, the communication, the phone calls, the correspondence, the views that's been exchanged between the two leaders. I believe that that's been going on for a long time. Recently, I'm talking about the last couple of days,
yes,
things have been changing very drastically. Egypt has been trying to reach a truce, you know, a ceasefire, for a long time now. What changed actually, or what's been changed for the last couple of days, is that the operation that Israel has started in the eastern districts of Rafah.
The Palestinian city of Rafah.
Yes.
Yes.
So that actually required that a new perception, a new way of dealing with the situation, because the entire thing now is very dangerous. And even I believe the word dangerous is not actually enough to describe, you know, the situation. It's so grave, so alarming. The entire region, and I believe not only the entire region, I believe the entire world is watching very closely about what's going on in Rafah and in Gaza.
Yes.
And Egypt, as I said, is a very important player in the game. It's, you know, I would say that Egypt is a cornerstone in the entire formula. And Egypt is being seen as a credible mediator in that game. Not only just as any other states in the region. No, Egypt is different because Egypt has a long history with the occupying forces, with Israel. And actually, you know, we were the first country to strike a deal with Israel, and that was a breakthrough. And even till today, that's been seen, the peace accord or the peace treaty with Israel is being seen as a cornerstone in the relationships between the Arabs and Israel. So Egypt is being seen as, okay, a key player, as I said.
Yes.
And UN is relying on Egypt heavily, I would say very heavily on Egypt, okay, concerning what's going on in Rafah. And let me remind our viewers of what's been going on, and I still recall the visit that, okay, Mr. Guterres paid, and he was there at the, Rafah,
the Rafah border crossing.
The border crossing,
yes.
And he delivered, I still recall the speech he made over there, and that speech made the other side, the Israelis, so furious, and they were so mad because, okay, Mr. Guterres was very clear in condemning not allowing the aid, humanitarian aid, into Gaza back then.
Yes.
And I believe history repeats itself, unfortunately. Okay, how? Because, you know, for the last 7 months, we've been seeing Palestinians being pushed down. I'm talking about southwardly.
Yes.
You know, the forced evacuation of whatever being done by the Israeli forces against the Palestinians. And it's being said, okay, that, okay, you go southwardly. That's the only safe place that you would go to, or you should, or you must go to. Now, we're talking about 1.4 million people, okay, and it's one of the mostly densely populated areas in the entire world.
Yes.
And now we're saying that, okay, no, we have actually to go into Rafah. I think the situation nowadays is much more dangerous than as it started on October 7th. So once again, the phone call today, I think that wasn't just a mere phone call.
Yes.
It was like a coordination between the two leaders. Okay, what to do? What would be the next step? Okay,
so
United
what's
Nations
next?
on one hand.
This
what's
is my next question. In your opinion, what would be next after the acceptance of Hamas of the conditions of the truce or the ceasefire?
Okay, actually, in my opinion, it's not that simple because there are two delegations left today.
Yes.
And there is no official statement coming of the negotiations. So which is, I find it so alarming. Okay, if we go back a little bit, we notice that Israel, okay, has been saying that, okay, no, we can't wait anymore. And there are 4 battalions, okay, of Hamas in Rafah, and we need to get done with the 4 battalions, okay, in Rafah. That's why we should go into Rafah straight forwardly. Okay,
so there is no official breakthrough in the negotiations between both sides?
Till now, officially speaking. Officially speaking, there is no, okay, because nothing has been declared or acknowledged, or we don't know about it till now. That's the question, or one of the biggest questions. On the other hand, Egypt, the diplomacy of Egypt.
Yes.
Okay, because I noticed in the introduction, Mr. Ahmed, you were talking about, okay, the Egyptian diplomacy in general.
Yes, that's the main topic.
Years,
yes, exactly.
In the last 10 years.
Yes.
And, okay, if you don't mind, I feel like the entire experience that has been accumulated for the last 10 years has been shown in the last 7 months. So we can see that, okay, how experienced the Egyptian diplomacy has become, okay, for the last 10 years. We're watching this very closely. And let me give you a couple of examples. First, okay, despite, okay, the non-stop provocation coming from Tel Aviv for the last 7 months, and I mean the word provocation, and it is, unfortunately, it's a systematic one.
Yes.
Okay, and it's like testing out. Okay, and actually, you know, Egypt has been trying since day one to deal with the situation in a very, and I would use the word wisdom, despite the fact that the word wisdom even is not enough to describe, you know, the Egyptian diplomacy and the attitude of, you know, the leadership and attitude of, you know, the Egyptian diplomacy in general, okay, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, okay, because we have been trying to control the whole situation so as not to go out of hands, and I mean it. Because
for the entire region.
Exactly, because my feeling goes like what, okay, Israel or Tel Aviv, namely, we're talking about Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, I feel like he doesn't care about, okay, the situation in the entire region, or even if the escalation has gone, okay, in the middle of nowhere, as we say that, okay, it doesn't really matter, which I find it is unreasonable and unimaginable, because you have, you know, millions of people suffering. Okay, we talked about, okay, that 1.4, as I said before, in Rafah, and as we see the pictures and the videos coming from there, okay, and the regular human atrocities being committed against those people, and he doesn't feel like it's a big deal. At the same time, the escalation is not calculated on their side. Okay, what are we aiming? Let me go back to the question that you asked Mr. Ahmed a couple of minutes ago about what's next. What's next here relies on different factors. One of them is the attitude of the other side, what they need and what they want. And this is, I think in my mind, that's very crucial. Tel Aviv, what they want, what actually what they are after.
Yes.
Their pursuit, as we say, the final goal. What is their final goal? I've been wondering myself, because I'm into politics and I'm into history. As you read history and you read about, okay, the Egyptian, okay, foreign policy and Israeli foreign policy, and then you would wonder about, okay, that, okay, what you want? Okay, are you sure that you want peace? Okay, do you understand the word peace? And I'm talking about Tel Aviv.
Yes.
Do they get the word peace as we get it, as we understand,
a different interpretation of peace?
Okay, and
yes.
Yeah, and I feel like so that they have a totally different perception of the word peace. So what's next here relies on what they're after, what they want, and then something else. Okay, the mediators, straightforwardly, I'm talking about Washington D.C., the United States of America.
Yes.
Which I think it's actually we need. More or less, we rely on the states anyways, because that's the only mediator in the entire game for nowadays.
How do you see the role of Egypt in terms of mediating efforts, as we have seen since October the 7th, between Hamas and Israel?
Egypt has never stopped doing this, and we mean it. And actually, I think nowadays, okay, if we ask most of, if not all, European leaders about how they see that Egyptian role, most of them, they would say that we truly appreciate what Egypt has been doing.
Yes.
And I think that's undeniably true. Okay, we've been trying very sincerely, and I mean the word sincerely, that because actually Egypt has suffered from the atrocities of war, and we don't actually want to go back in history, because the reoccurrence of history in that regard is very dangerous. We don't want to go back to this. We don't want to go back to war. Egypt, I believe, in my mind, okay, is the last country in the region that wants to go back to war. Because we know what it means. Because we suffered. We lost tens of thousands of our martyrs in wars, in the previous wars. We don't want to go back to this. And economically speaking, we get the price tag. We understand the price tag because it's very costly. So Egypt, on numerous occasions, I want to actually in the report that preceded our talk, okay, actually, it's very obvious. We can list like on multiple occasions, okay, that we've been trying, we have been actually talking to everyone, and I mean it. Egypt was the first one to take the first step, holding an international conference after October 7th. We were the first one. It was very obvious that Egypt wants peace. Egypt pursuing peace. We need to have this. And actually, I believe, I don't remember how many countries actually, but it was a large number of countries, I believe, back then, okay, that they decided to come and actually to Cairo and convening the conference.
Because we have to go to the other report for tonight. I would like to ask you more about the visit of the Prime Minister of Jordan, Bishr al-Khawasna, and his meeting with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, because it was the same context, the ceasefire in Gaza, to be reaching a ceasefire in Gaza, the exchange of hostages, to be getting more humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. How do you think it is important to be having collaborations and cooperation between Egypt and Jordan and, of course, the other regional powers regarding Gaza?
The two countries that directly involved in the whole situation for now, Egypt and Jordan. Why? Egypt because of the Peninsula Sinai, okay, and of course Gaza, because it's next door. And on the other hand, the West Bank and Jordan. And the entire situation, or the strategy, or the Israeli perception or dream was like that, okay, we would like to evacuate, the forced evacuation, displacement of the Palestinians into, okay, Jordan and into Egypt. So, as you said, Mr. Ahmed, that coordination is a must nowadays. There is no way back on coordination.
On the other hand, we have seen as well a meeting between Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli and the Prime Minister of Jordan, and we have seen some statements made by the Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli regarding the situation in the Gaza Strip, saying that the Rafah border crossing is open for 24 hours a day from the Egyptian side, and that Egypt has contributed about 80% of the humanitarian aid sent to Gaza over the past 7 months. How do you see the importance of those efforts by Egypt and those statements by the Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli?
Again, that actually started day one.
Yes.
Okay, I'm talking about the humanitarian aid being sent into Gaza. Okay, second thing, which is very crucial as well, which is that Egypt wants the aid to be into Gaza, as I said.
Yes.
Okay, there is a persistent lie coming from Tel Aviv, and I think we have seen it a couple of weeks ago, and they said, and I think we still recall it, Egypt doesn't want this. Egypt is not cooperating. And then, Egypt responded directly that, what you're talking about?
Yes.
We've been trying, and everyone in the world has been watching this. It's on TV, and they can see that Egypt has been trying so hard to get the humanitarian aid into Gaza. So actually, we need to face those consistent, persistent lies coming from Tel Aviv.
Yes, Dr. Milad, allow me to be going to the other report of the daily debate for tonight, which focuses on the foreign policy of Egypt under the tenure of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for the past decade, and how the foreign policy has developed over this decade with the countries from Africa, Asia and Europe as well. We'll be having more details regarding such an important topic in the upcoming report. Stay tuned.
The Egyptian affiliation to the African continent comes on top of the Egyptian foreign policy. It also constitutes one of the main milestones in the history of Egypt, where since President el-Sisi assumed office, Egypt has aimed to play an active role in various mechanisms of joint African action, through stimulating cooperation between Egypt and African brothers in all fields, the matter which was shown by paying many visits and welcoming the African officials in Egypt. However, such visits witnessed the signing of many bilateral agreements between Egypt and African countries in order to support economic cooperation. The relations between Egypt and its partners in Asia witnessed great momentum based on the exchange of interests. The Asian Circle came as the concentration of President el-Sisi's attention, where new relations were built with Asian countries that were not visited by any Egyptian president, in addition to the return of suspended visits to major Asian countries. This fact was embodied in the Asian tours paid by President el-Sisi and his official visits to Singapore, China, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Japan, South Korea and Vietnam. These visits, however, aim to benefit from the experiences and expertise of these countries in the areas of development, education, industry, development of Egyptian economy and attraction of investments, where they resulted in the signing of several agreements and memoranda of understanding in these areas. The Egyptian-European relations witnessed strong momentum at the bilateral level through President el-Sisi's visits to Germany, Italy, Britain, France, Russia, Hungary, Portugal, or at the multilateral level, including the mechanism of tripartite cooperation with Greece and Cyprus, or the development of relations up to the level of partnership with the countries of Visegrad, through Egypt's first participation in the Visegrad Group Summit. The Egyptian-American relations witnessed significant development, where the Egyptian-American coordination represents an important part in the strategy of cooperation in issues and files, especially with regard to the most important file in the region, namely the international terrorism, terrorist organizations and extremist ideas that have been developed in the conflicts. Egypt enjoys a comprehensive vision in dealing with these terrorism-related phenomena, which is based on dealing with a comprehensive policy launching a military, security, cultural and development confrontation, drying up the sources of terrorism, taking deterrent actions against countries that support and finance terrorism and terrorist organizations, launching cooperation among major countries to prevent infiltration of terrorists.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I am honored to be having with me over the program for tonight Dr. Milad Mumtaz, the international relations expert. Thank you very much once again for being with us tonight. I would like to ask about the future of Egypt's foreign policy. In your opinion, how do you think it will be shaped under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in a new term, as we have seen the past of the past decade, and the present of it as we have discussed it in the past break?
I strongly believe that Egypt is on the right track in terms of promoting foreign policy. Why? Okay, I think we have like 2 or 3 main reasons. First, okay, as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi came to power 10 years ago,
yes,
he had a clear vision about foreign policy. One of the most important cornerstones of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's vision is the multilateral relations.
Yes.
And let me explain a little bit about what that word means.
Yes.
Okay, before, and let me actually take the viewers back to 1990 and the Soviet Union collapse. The entire world changed into something else. A unilateral world dominated. It's called unilateral domination.
Yes.
Dominated by the United States of America. Okay, and the entire scene changes since then. And then came China, okay, into the scene.
Yes.
And things actually, changed more and more. Egypt, unfortunately, before 2014, and let's say I have to be more accurate, 2010. Before 2010, Egyptian foreign policy was kind of vague. The cornerstones were not clear enough. Okay, it was kind of foggy, and I still recall, that some relations which were supposed to be very strong, okay, were really weak. For example, like
Africa.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's a very clear example. Despite the fact that in 1950s and 60s, we were among the leaders, the main leaders, and I don't want to say that the main one, but I think 1950s and 60s were so flourishing. Egypt was so different when it comes to Africa.
Yes.
And then Egypt, unfortunately, for different reasons, we don't want to discuss the reasons for now, but there was kind of declination and deterioration in the Egyptian-African foreign policy or relations. And that lasted for, I believe, at least 2 decades, 3 decades at least. And then, okay, the revolution came 2011, and then Mr. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi came to power as president of Egypt. And then, last 10 years, things actually, are becoming more and more different because, as I said, the vision is different. The vision in terms of what? The vision in terms of the goals. We need to build bridges between Egypt and different countries. As I said, the multilateral relations, not unilateral one. We don't want to rely on one country, a single country in that context.
Yes.
We need to diversify the foreign relations of our country. And that's very obvious nowadays. Again, let me go back to the report.
Yes.
Okay, the different examples, numerous examples of the visits of the president. And let me focus on Africa, because Africa to us is like the courtyard. It's like the backyard to Egypt.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we want to actually when it comes, that's my understanding. Let me share it with you.
Yes.
When it comes to economic relations, I believe we should focus mainly, firstly, on Africa. Africa is one of the richest continents in the world in terms of raw materials.
Yes.
It's one of the richest. Forget about the colonial period and whatever, and Africa has been taken advantage of. I'm talking about the potential. It's the most potential continent in the entire world. And we have been neglecting, I'm talking about Egypt before.
Yes.
We've been neglecting this, unfortunately. Okay, the Egyptian presidency, I'm talking about President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. His vision is different on this. He sees this differently, that, okay, that Africa to us nowadays is a priority, is a very important priority nowadays.
Yes.
And even Africans see us differently nowadays. They trust in us, they see us, as I said before, a credible mediator. And by the way, we're not talking about Gaza, I'm talking about Africa.
Yes.
Because Africa, politically speaking, is suffering from numerous political and regional
internal
issues.
conflicts, yes.
Yeah, so many conflicts.
Yes.
But I'm talking about when it comes to economic and how potential that continent is, Egypt is 100% right. Egypt is 100% wise in terms of, you know, building bridges economically and politically with those African countries.
Yes, Dr. Milad Mumtaz, the international relations expert. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching and goodbye.